So tonight we're talking about pair programming and some different ways to do that. So there's a few different ways that you can pair program, and yeah, different tools that we can use to do that. So pair programming can be a few different situations. It can be one person, maybe you're working with somebody who's more knowledgeable than you or less knowledgeable than you, and one person is like the mentor and one person is the student sort of situation where, you're maybe if it's you working on some code and somebody's, helping you out, or if you have a question about something, you have somebody advising you and looking at your code and helping you debug and work through things. It could be working on the same problem together. And there's different ways to do that, which I think is going to be the majority of the way that you might need some new tools and tactics to do that. And yeah, I think those are probably the two main ways that we end up pair programming in a live sort of setting. There is the true live pair programming where two people are sitting next to each other in a room, hacking at things. If you've ever been to a hackathon or any meetup type of place where you work on things together, that's that situation-ish. Like I went to a hackathon once, and I was tasked sort of with the front end, and other guys were doing the back end on Firebase, and we had one guy doing UI, UX stuff, building, doing design and building a custom logo and stuff, which was really cool. And styling it with CSS and merging it all together. But we were all attacking the same problems at the same time. And if somebody got stuck, we just stood up and walked over to their computer and looked at the code and just did it that way. And then we just get up to squish it all together. But most of the time, I think we want to see how we can do this outside of that situation. I think, the stand up and walk to somebody's desk and look at the code together thing, we can all figure out. And Instaapp, yeah, we got pretty close. We just had a few little things left to squish together that day, but we almost got there. But yeah, so I'm not really going to talk about that, although that will happen. And if you're in a situation where you're working in an office with other developers as your first job, or even your second or third job, as you move along, you'll become a little bit more senior and you'll be mentoring other people. But, the walk across the room to somebody's desk and look at the code together thing is, I think, doesn't need to be discussed too much, because you'll be doing the same thing as this, just in person. So one way to pair program, I think we've all, well, maybe not all of us, but I won't make that assumption. But it's offered by Flatiron through the Learn program and through Ask a Question, and that's the screen share. So typically, the way that goes is one person, the student, will be stuck on something. So let's see. Oh, I didn't know this was in this folder. So we got this problem, and we're stuck. Get gem set working right, and let's get into this folder. We should have failing test. Yeah. Okay. So, we work on it and we work on it and we work on it. We're like, man, why is this not working the way we want? Or you get a weird bug, get a weird error, and you're just really stuck. And, part of the pair programming is also knowing when to reach out for help, and especially in a job situation, your first job, your second job, when you're early on in your career, knowing when to ask for that help for pair programming is also important. So get to a point and, you've Googled some, you've racked your brain, you haven't gotten so frustrated that you want to quit, but you're getting frustrated and you're just kind of getting to that point where you're not being productive anymore. So you reach out for help, to ask a question, or to whoever your mentor is, or whoever it might be. And if you're not immediately next to them, we're going to assume that we're all working, let's say, remotely, then they might say, hey, let's just hop on a screen share. So in this sense, we will have two people looking at one computer screen from their own desktops. So let's see. Who wants to help out with this? I just want somebody to request remote control. You should be able to do that. Okay. I believe I have a very timid group this evening, but basically both people's keyboards and mice will be able to work on this computer. So I might have some code, and I'm thinking, birthday kids teach to kid, and I don't even know. I'm looking at this and assuming that I'm writing something that might work. And, puts happy birthday, I guess this should be string, kid. And, yeah, go for it. Okay. And then, Nicole, right? Yes, Nicole. Look back at, might say, oh, well, let me show you something. Let's get rid of that line 9. Oh, all good. You don't have to unmute yourself. I've figured it out. And, Nicole can just say, if she said, hey, hold up a second, let me show you something. She goes and she moves the mouse around and, goes and highlights line 9 and deletes it. And then does whatever. Just trying to show an example. But that's one way of yeah. And I'm sitting over here just watching and learning and seeing what's going on. And this is one way to get through to some topics that might be a little bit outside of the scope of what a person knows. So there might be some cool little trick that Nicole knows that I don't know, and it's like, oh, that's so cool. But talking me through it or pointing me to some documentation in this instance is not going to be the best way. So Nicole just says, hey, let me take over. Let me write some code. Let me show you something. Let me explain it to you afterwards. And then, let's keep moving. And that is likely to happen in the job experience because, bosses are busy and they want to help push knowledge onto you, explain it some, and then kind of set you loose with your new knowledge. In Flatiron, it's definitely a little less of that hand-holding. It's more of, wanting to push you in the right direction. And because we're teaching a way of thinking, as well as how to code. So you won't get that as much through the program. However, you'll get that a little bit more, I think, in the business world, just because of the a little bit more of the time is valuable aspect of things. And, bosses and mentors and seniors have things that they're tasked with, and, trusting that we as juniors have done our due diligence and tried a lot of things. And, that's also bringing the problem to them in a way where, saying, I tried these 4 things, they're not working, this is where I'm stuck, giving a good context and letting them help. So using Ask a Question screen shares is not available for projects. Projects, you can request one-on-ones with technical coaches, and I believe section leads. I think there's a system section lead. Can't keep track of the structure of things all the time, but any labs that you're really stuck on, through Ask a Question, you can put your question there, and it can be assessed. And typically the technical coach team, I no longer do Ask a Question, but I have in the past, and I know that we assess the complexity of the problem and see what is best, if it might be a short chat or if it's screen shares. But I know that one-on-one screen shares are definitely something that you can get through Ask a Question portfolio projects and projects throughout. The larger things are a different structure. So yeah, this is one way. The screen share with 2 people on it is probably the way that we've seen already or have had some exposure to. If not, it's not uncommon to do things like this. Just grab control, have 2 people, same keyboard, same mouse working on the same thing. Now, back to my notes. Another way to share code is through a version control system. So actually, let me pop out a new. Thank you, Nicole, for helping out and just showing. I don't know if it was clear that I wasn't doing anything, but yeah. Okay. So through version control, we'll use GitHub for an example because I think it's the most known. Let's look at tic-tac-toe. It's actually it's tic-tac-toe. Okay. So many tic-tac-toes. No. Let me find my project. Sorry. But so I'm going to show how 2 people can work on the same project using GitHub at the same time and kind of in a take turns type of way. All right. This is the portfolio project that we do ourselves. Here we go. I think this still will link to the right. This project has changed since I did it with what's the name? Okay, I'll find it. Profile. I think I can filter them better here. Thanks. Yeah, that was this art thing, and they were setting up portrait booths in the back of like looked like man, I can't remember the name of it. What was that? I don't know. I'll find it real quick. Sorry about the wait. But yeah, this was the picture was this art thing that they were going around Nashville, and it was like the back of what looked like kind of like a food truck, but it was all black. And they had this thing set up, and you sit in there and you take a portrait, and they printed out on site, and they were actually pasting them on the side of buildings and making these like mural things. And then right in here. And then if there were too many, they saved them, and then they made this big art display at the end. It's this company that does public art. Okay. Serializer. Okay. Well, I'll just pick something. I wanted to show the actual commits and stuff, but that's fine. So here's something that I'm working on. Let's say, we decide we want to work on this together and keep building this thing. Whether it was the jQuery backend or something else. I'm going to have to find that repository. Sad that I lost it. But on GitHub, there's a couple ways to do this. So the easiest way, or I won't say easiest, because everybody has their own workflow and different things are going to work better for different people and different groups of people. But you see we have this one contributor. So right now, I'm the only one that can contribute to this repository. So if somebody else wanted to contribute, they would have to fork it, clone it down, make changes, push up those changes, and open a pull request, which is fine for things like open source projects. People don't want to allow people to commit to the repository. They want to guard it. They want to protect it. When you're on a team at a job, it won't be that way. They just have standards in place where you might have only a few people who are allowed to merge to master, and everybody works on branches or what have you. Or it might be exactly what I said. I don't know. But so having contributors to the same repository is how I did it in the jQuery project, which I was trying to find to show you. But you can go to settings, up here repository, and click collaborators. And here, I could add somebody as a collaborator. So I am going to use my magic powers to find, here's Nicole, who helped me out earlier. So if I wanted to add her as a collaborator, I could do that. And she would get emails and invite link. There's also this copy invite link, which I could send to her. And after that point in time, actually, go ahead and click on that. It should. Let me know when you put down. Okay. So poll accepted. So it won't be as a contributor because there haven't been any code contributed yet, but should have as a collaborator. We have Nicole now. So now if Nicole wanted to write code on here, She can do it to her heart's content. And there'd be no problem with that. She has complete control of it, just like I have complete control of it. So this is something that, you know, when you're working with a partner on something, you can do. So the way that I did it with, man, I can't even remember his name. I remember his GitHub username. But the guy that I worked with on the project was the jQuery tic-tac-toe project is a test-driven project. So we just set up a Slack together. There's many ways to chat about things. So we just, you know, got a one-on-one Slack chat going. And I was like, okay, we had this one repository, and I had my copy cloned down, and I would say, okay, I got the first test, and I would, you know, run the test. I would get the test to pass. I would git push the code, and that would save it to the repository. And he would do git pull. He would have the code that I just wrote, and then he would start work on the next test. And, you know, we didn't completely work in silos like that. You know, if sometimes I'd be looking at the test after his because the code wasn't dependent on it and start thinking about that problem. So I'd be playing around with things while he's doing his part. A handy tool for doing that type of thing is you're writing some code and you want to just have this pulled down. Let me open this project. Good example.
Seth, do you want me to open it? Like, do you want me to fork it and clone it and have it on my computer?
Yeah, if you want to.
Do I need to fork it and then clone it like I normally would, or do I just clone it?
No. So because, and great question to you know, illustrate, because you've been added as a collaborator, you can just clone it from right here.
Okay.
It's still going to live because I created it under my profile, but you can clone it. Yeah, just clone it down and add something to the README. So, and then push it up. Just make sure, okay, have the latest copy.
And then
So,
push or git.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, git add, git commit, git push.
Okay.
Now we see we have a commit from Nicole. Her code is now part of that repository. When I do git pull, that's fair program. File changed, it has the insertions, it has the additions, and I have the updated code. So now, you know, if I was like working on a different problem where, oh, we're supposed to have subtitles, then I could do that. And push it up. And now it's available for Nicole to pull if she, you know, and so we could go back and forth like that. Git pull, git push, or git pull, write our code, get a test to pass, git commit, git push. You can also do this on larger portions of the project. So if you were working on, say, the Rails API with the jQuery front-end tic-tac-toe, one person can be working on the Rails API portion, and one person can start work on the jQuery portion, because the code in those two isn't going to overlap. So you're not going to have what are called conflicts. And even if you do, there's built-in tools inside GitHub to help with that, and then many tools outside of that. But we can see in our commit history here that we're going back and forth, and that can continue along. We actually, when I worked on the project, my partner was, or I think lives in South Africa. So we got to a point in the night where he was like, dude, it's just so late, I'm going to sleep. And I was like, okay, we had 10 tests left. I was like, I got the next 5. He said, okay, just hit me up on Slack when you're done with them so I know I can pick it up. And I finished those 5. And then when he got up in the morning, he finished the last 5. He was like, hey, it's done, go look at it. And I'm going to submit it. I was like, sweet, cool. And that's how we finished the project. But for a long time, we went back and forth one-to-one. We could even open up Slack chat, or we had a Slack chat open, and sometimes, we were struggling on something. We would turn on the screen share like we were just doing and, work it out together and talk about it. Right there, I could see, what he was thinking code-wise. It might be a way that I wouldn't think about it, and what I was thinking code-wise, he might not have been thinking about it. And we go back and forth like that. So a lot of these do also overlap. Another way to do this, I put it in my blog when I was going through the program, so I'm going to post that in the chat, but also, okay, so I'm going to ask, merging to master done only by the admin, ? In our case, you're the only one. How can you commit the changes? So I'm not the only admin in this case because under settings, I added a collaborator. So the collaborators get full access to the repository, push access to the repository. So that means anything that I can do, any of these collaborators can do now. There are a few ways that you can limit stuff that collaborators can do. So we see in options, restrict, well, that's wiki, restrict editing to collaborators only, but merging, somewhere in here, that there are some more advanced options that you can set where, like, I know I have a repository with collaborators, and I set it that before somebody can merge or branch in to master, it has to be reviewed by one person. So like another collaborator has to sign off on it. But you don't have to set those things up. By default, it's just open. And as long as you add a collaborator, they have full access. Cool. Glad you see that now. So this other way that I actually haven't done, but this comes from Cernin. I'll post this in the chat too. And I just wrote a blog as I went through the program. This is like literally I copied and pasted what Cernin said, but I was asking about pair programming, and Cernin threw this into the chat, kind of just squashed it into a better blog format. But he was saying you can get the same repo. So we both have one of these project repos. Let's say it's this jQuery tic-tac-toe Rails backend API. So I have one, and my partner has one. And then in your respective terminals, you would each run the command git remote add upstream for the other person, their URL. And then when you run, here, should be able to do this from, let me open Labs. All right, hash iteration. Let's look at this one. So right now, when we look at git remote -v, we're just standing for verbose. We have my link, or we have the origin. I must have cloned this directly from the Learn Code link. So we see Learn Code students #iteration.git. And that's telling us that this is basically the URL, github.com/learncodestudent. So now, if we were to get my copy, I could probably just do it with this link, but I'll get the right one. #iteration. #iteration. And then git remote add upstream. Now git remote -v. You see we have an origin and an upstream. So we have two remotes. And you could add, it doesn't have to be upstream, you could say git remote add, something else. That's just the name. But one for the origin, which is going to be your respective repo. I have them backwards in this one because when I do these study groups, I just pull them directly from the source location so that my code isn't in them. And I start with clean repositories. But then you'll have your partner's repository. So you'll have two of those. And now the workflow is, before either person starts working, is to run git pull upstream master. This actually, I think, will make sense here because there's code in the upstream, my repository, that isn't currently in the repository from the origin. So I have changes. It's telling me I have changes that either need to be committed or taken care of. So let's just do worth it. Let me just close this. Can't just. I can go here. Discard changes. Okay. And now let's do this. And Git will tell you exactly what's going on. It's pulling some stuff down and says, your local changes to the following files would be overridden by merge. Please commit your changes or stash them before you merge. Aborting. So it's telling me, I didn't pull anything down because you have changes that aren't not saved because the file on my local computer is saved, but not committed. And that's what GitHub's looking at, commits. So you have what's called unstaged changes, or uncommitted changes. You stage them, then you commit them. So I've gotten that taken care of. Now let's git pull upstream master. And we see all the code gets pulled in. And now my local repository is in line with this one. What I have is the upstream source. Now, what would happen is I would work on my part, and then I would push my code. And the idea is always to pull before you start work. And with that workflow, you will each have your code in sync. Just remember to pull before you push. So you want to line things up before you end up pushing it. And you want to push to your copy and then pull from the other person's copy. So what's happening is I'm pulling from my partners, getting their code, and I'm pushing it up to mine, mirroring it with my changes. They're pulling from mine, getting any code that they just wrote, I've copied over to mine, and they're getting my new code and pulling it down to them, and then they push it up. So it's kind of like a circle in that aspect of, I wonder if I can do this. So you have yours, and then your repo, your local, push to your repo, and then that goes to partner repo or partner local. Partner repo. I was never one of those people who liked to ASCII art. Sort of with that workflow is what's going on. Our code, we push it to our repo, partner pulls it from there, pushes it to their repo, and then we pull it to our local and such. That's another way to do this. Like I said, we set up the collaborator style, but this works just as well. To work on it, a project, and then you each keep your own repositories under your account if that's something that you really want to do. If you're wondering about the little contribution boxes that people get obsessed over sometimes, even if it's not your repository, you'll get your little green colors in. So don't worry about that if you were thinking about it. Oh, they changed that whole logo. I'll look at that later. Sorry. Shiny things distracting me. But yeah, any questions, comments, concerns? Those were the main things I wanted to go over with pair programming. We looked at just the screen share through something like Zoom or Hangouts or even Slack has integrated screen sharing now for one-to-one. You can't do them in groups without having a paid Slack, but one-to-one is integrated. I think Facebook Messenger, I think everything has video chat and some sort of screen sharing built into it these days. It seems like everybody's integrating it through Skype or whatever. There's that. There's setting up a person as a collaborator on your repository and both pushing to the same master and working on it that way and going back and forth. There's talking through it, just taking turns and staying connected via Slack or through a phone call or audio. Yeah, I've done that as well. Did that while going through Learn. Had one person on video chat, and we were all on one screen. We were just going back and forth with one person typing and just the other person talking it out and throwing like, hey, try this, or have you tried this, or hey, try this. And we didn't do the actual two people controlling the keyboard type of thing. So there's many ways to do it. I think version control in the middle is going to be the most common. But yeah, any questions that I can answer, comments, things that you've thought of, other ways that you might have done it? Okay, well, I don't see any questions. I'm going to be hanging out here. But before you go, stop the video.